Hi everybody, I just wanted to put together a brief tutorial for beginner's guitar today. Okay, we're going to have a look at a number of things. We're going to have a look at what a beat is and what a rhythm is, and we'll look at the main differences. We'll also touch briefly on what note values are when we're talking about rhythms. We'll have a look at the basic parts of the guitar. We'll look at technique as well, so how to play the guitar, and then we'll have a look at some resources, and we'll be doing some exercises in the middle as well, looking at chords and how to play individual notes using our fingers on the guitar. Okay, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn the guitar over and we're just going to do a short exercise. We're going to have a look first of all at what a beat is. Now if you listen to a piece of music, quite often you may tap your foot. You may even tap your hand like this. You may even nod your head. And what you're actually doing there is you're locating the beat. Another name for beat is pulse as well, so quite often it's the thread that runs all the way through a piece of music. Okay? So if I was to do that as an example, just on the back of the guitar and just find the beat. Okay. Now in a band situation, the drummer generally provides the beat. So quite often we think it's the singer that's leading the band, but quite often it can be the drummer as well, because the drummer is providing the beat and setting what's called the tempo. The tempo means speed, so we can have a fast tempo and we can also have a slow tempo. So the drummer is a very important member of the band because they are directing everybody else. Just like the singer is orchestrating the music, the drummer is setting the tempo. Using the beat. Okay, so the thing is with a beat is it's always usually the same. There's very little variation. It can go fast or slow, but it's usually always spaced out the same. So there's the beat. Now in my right hand I'm going to do a rhythm. Now a rhythm can be made up of long and short sounds, so it's quite different really. So if I was to do the rhythm with my right hand, you can hear the difference straight away. Okay, now if I were to do the beat with my left hand and my rhythm with my right, you can see the differences at the same time. So I'm just going to do that. So there's the beat. Okay, so there's a short example. Okay, so if I was to transfer this to the guitar now, okay, I could play a rhythm onto the body of the guitar here and then transfer it onto the string. So let's transfer that onto the strings. I'll play a chord there. Okay. It could also be transferred using single notes. Okay, so the rhythm can be transferred onto any instrument, a piano, a saxophone or a flute for example. So what we're doing is we're taking the rhythm and we're now transferring it onto the guitar. Okay. When we are playing the beat, we might keep time with his foot. So the pulse. So if you think of it as like the heartbeat of the music, like we have a heart that provides a beat, we can also use this foot to keep a beat going. So there's the beat with the foot, and there's a rhythm with the hand, and we're doing those at the same time. Okay, let's briefly just have a look at note values as well. Okay. So when we are reading rhythms, or we're reading music, we're reading what's called notation, and we are reading note values. If you write a piece of music, you need to be able to understand note values so that you can write it down. And we'll have a look at three basic note values. Look at a whole note or semibreve, that's two terms for the same thing. We'll have a look at a minim, which is 2 beats in length, and a crotchet, which is 1 beat. Okay, now if I were to play this bass string here, this is an E string, and you can try this at home if you like. This is, like I say, quite basic to start off with, but it gives you an idea on how to understand the basics. So if I use my thumb and I play that string and we count to 4, and I'll tap with this hand because I'm going to use this hand to identify the beat. So if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can try that at home and stop there. That's called a whole note or semibreve. So 4 beats in length. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I stop that ringing there. Okay. Now if I was to strike this bass note here and hold for 2, 1, 2, that's called a minim. And then 1 is a crotchet. 1. Now when we're writing a piece of music, we're using these in combination with one another. So I could make a rhythm where I do 1, 2, 3, 4, and stop. Okay, so two different note values together. Okay, and that's how we read music, and that's how we would write it down. So we'll perhaps look at that a bit later when we look at notation. Okay, so we looked at three basic note values there. Whole note, which lasts for 4 beats, or semi-breathe. We looked at a minim that lasts for 2, and a crotchet that lasts for 1 beat. Okay, and you can do that with chords as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and stop there. And a minim, 1, 2, we stop, and a crotchet, 1. Okay, so there's some basic examples of note values which we can look at a later date as well. Let's have a look at the parts of the guitar now. So I tend to hold the guitar here when I'm teaching students for the first time, mainly to draw a comparison between the guitar and the human body. So we've got a headstock, like you've got a head, a neck, there's the neck, there's the body of the guitar. Let's just put this guitar over here now, and we can have a look at the other parts, which don't really refer quite as easily. We've got the bridge, which holds all the strings in place. 6 strings, which are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Then we've got a sound hole where the sound reverberates inside. The neck, obviously, which I mentioned, there's a body again. Frets go down the neck. Okay, a headstock, like I mentioned earlier, and tuning pegs. And this is called a nut, which is quite an unusual term there. Okay, so with the right hand, when we're playing guitar, there's more than one way to play these strings. You can use a plectrum or your fingers. The thumb sits on the bass string, usually about here, which is an E string. This is E, but we're not going to play that like we did here. We're just going to rest our hand there. And here, if you can create this arch, if you're doing classical, imagine you've got like an orange under you, a big orange there, or a melon or something under your arm to keep it arched here. And then these fingers, which is index and middle, and then your ring finger and little finger, they swap on these strings, and we play what's called free stroke. Okay, now this is an exercise that you can do just to get moving on the guitar. And we're doing index, middle, like this. Okay, now with the plectrum, this is a different way to play guitar. You might use this more on an electric guitar, which is there. You can go down, up, down, up, which is another way of playing the strings. So we put it between your thumb and your index finger, so you can try that as well if you like. Okay, so you can either practice at home if you like, doing this, fingers behind the thumb, and we're walking with these fingers, just striking below the string, which is called free stroke, so you can practice that at home if you like. And if you want, you can practice the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4 and stop. 1, 2, 3, 4 and stop. Or 1, 2, 3, 4 and stop. Okay, so we're playing crotchet notes there. Okay. Right, let's have a look at the other hand this time. So one of the things that I always try and mention to students is about developing the right technique, because quite often you can pick up bad habits if you start learning to use your fingers incorrectly. In the left hand, the thumb tends to sit behind the neck, like this, and the fingers are numbered 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay, now each finger has got its own designated space when you're first learning, and this is called first position. So if you notice, each finger's got its own fret to sit in there. So this will be first position, then you've got second position, this will be third position, then fourth and fifth, etc. So you go all the way up the top of the neck there. Okay, so these are the correct positions for your fingers. A good exercise to do when you're first learning is to just make sure that the fingers sit in the right place. So we do this exercise. Okay, now what we're going to do here is we're just going to move his fingers on this top string, which is called an E. This is an F and this is a G. And then we have what's called an F sharp in between. But don't worry about that too much, because it's an exercise in just using your fingers. So what we would do is we play an E here, which is called an open string. Then we do F. Then we do what's called F sharp, and then we do a G. So you can try that as well if you like. So we do E, F, make sure it's close to the fret there, F sharp and then G. Okay. So it's just a finger exercise, making sure we're using the right finger. So we're just using 1, 2 and 3. On the next string we can do the same. Open string B, C, C sharp, D. Now don't worry about the note names at the moment. So it's the next string up and we're doing the same. Then we can do the next one on the G, which is the third string up. Okay, so don't worry if you don't remember all the note names at the moment. It's just about moving the fingers correctly on the strings. Okay, in the right hand, if you don't want to use your fingers, you can do down, up, like this. And eventually, we're playing all of those strings there. And that is really just an exercise in making sure that you are using the correct fingers. What you can also do once you've mastered that, if you want to call it that, is then add the little finger. Etc. And then we do it all the way up on every string. Okay, now it might take a while to get used to that, so you may only be able to do, which is fine, and then the next string. Okay, so nice and simple, and don't try and do it all at once. Maybe just do the first string, then the next string. Okay, and if you notice, it's practicing getting the fingers in the right position. One of the things you want to avoid is this, which is really a waste of your fingers really, because you've got 4 here and you're just using 1. Okay, let's have a look at what chords are and playing chords using the rhythms that we talked about earlier. In contemporary music and worship music as well, we don't tend to use that many chords really. Quite often we can get away with 3 or 4. Now what we'll do is we'll have a look at 2 chords today. We'll have a look at a D chord and an A chord. So like I say, it's just the basics today, but we'll just have a look at those. The D chord's quite often used quite a lot in contemporary guitar music. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So rather than using individual fingers now, we're going to construct multiple notes to create a chord, which is what a chord is. Okay, so we put all those fingers down and then we play all the strings at the same time. This is called a D chord. In order to do that, we go to the 2nd fret with the 1st finger. There's the yellow sticker. Now you can copy these stickers if you want and put them on your guitar so you know where to put your fingers. 1st finger on this is called an A, which is that top sticker. Miss a string and go on to this one. Then we cover the other sticker up, which is the 3rd fret. And we play from the 4th string up, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we strum down, holding all those fingers down to the fretboard. Now it might hurt your fingers a little bit first, and then we've got a D. Now what we can do there as an exercise is we can hold that chord and we can count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we're applying what we learned earlier about rhythms. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can stop that ringing, which is a whole note rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you can practice that. Just play that chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, and stop. So there's the D chord. Now if we go to the A chord, we can put all those fingers down here. So this is a new chord. The 1st finger goes on the 4th string up, which is called an E. Then we go on to the A with the next string and the 3rd string up. And then the 2nd string up, 2nd fret, we put our finger there. And that's called an A chord. Now we play the A using this 5th string up, which is the A string, and we strum all the way down, and we can hold that for 4 as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, which is a whole note rhythm like we did on the last one. Now the trick here is to change from one to the other, which is a bit more difficult. So usually in music we're counting in bars, and usually in a bar there's 4 beats, so we usually do 1, 2, 3, 4, change, 1, 2, 3, 4. So because I counted to 4 twice, that's 2 bars. Okay, and let's do that as an exercise now. So we're going to change from D to the A chord. Okay, now this might take a while to do, particularly changing from one chord to the next when you have to lift your fingers off and find the location, so take your time. So we do 1, 2, 3, 4 and change. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're just changing from D to what's called the A chord. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you, if you get through that quite easily, how we can apply other note values to that chord as well. So we could do a crotchet rhythm where we play on every beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and A. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so what we're doing there is we're changing from one chord to the next, doing a bar on each. Okay. Alright, so it does take a while to be able to change from one chord to the next. Okay, now you can either concentrate on just playing chords to start off with, or you can have a look at learning how to play individual notes like we did at the beginning, or both, and it might be useful to do both eventually. Okay, but you can whiz backwards and forwards through the video and start where you feel most comfortable. The chords do tend to get you moving a bit quicker, particularly if you want to learn to play a piece of music. Okay, so that's really the basics for the guitar. I'm just going to pop this down and just talk very briefly about some of the resources that you can use. The internet is a brilliant tool for guitarists that want to learn pieces and learn technique. So there's lots of different sites that you can use. I'm just going to briefly go through some of the books that I use though first. Okay, if I'm teaching a beginner, a younger learner, I'll use this book, which is called The Guitarist's Way, which is quite a good book to use. It tells you all about how to read music, how to hold the guitar. There's a good introduction there. Lots of exercises looking at, first of all, just using open strings, which is what we did at the beginning, before we use the left hand, and how to read the music and how to understand what a rhythm is and what a beat is. And then right near the back, we've got some really nice exercises, some Spanish studies, and also a section on scales, which teaches you how to use your fingers correctly, like we did earlier. Okay, so that's more for a beginner there. For an older learner, I might use this one, Hal Leonard, which is very similar to the other one for an adult learner though. So it'll take you through similar about note values, some exercises there, quite basic to start off with. How to play chords, which we looked at earlier, right through to advanced, more complex rhythms, and different chords that you can use there. Okay, so for the classical guitarist, there's also the Solo Guitar Player, which I think is quite a good book for learning classical guitar, which you can also get. I've not got a copy of that at the moment, but that's quite a good book. And again, I think it's useful to make use of tutorials on YouTube as well. There's lots of sites where you can get music from. There's free sheet music, and Music Notes is quite good as well. So I think it's quite good when you're learning a musical instrument, to particularly guitar, to look at maybe using as many different resources as possible. I'd also encourage students to learn to read a bit of music as well, so you can learn tablature and you can read music, or a bit of both. So I always say to students, try to be balanced in what you're doing, try to do lots of different things, try not to just focus in on one area, but just to give yourself the opportunity to learn different styles and techniques. Okay, so I hope that's been useful for you, and hopefully see you again soon. Okay, bye.